We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. My thanks to Arlene in the last show. I knew you would enjoy that. I haven't even seen the comments as yet, but I know you liked her, and I also know you like this guy too because he's been on a few times. Um, I happen to like him too, and I don't know too many TikTok creators out there. Surprisingly, I don't know too many, but I know Abe Gurko. He is a big time creator on TikTok. He's somebody I watch all the time. I count on the information he has. He's been on the show before. You're not only informative, Abe, but you're entertaining, and that's kind of your nature in your
That's
life,
what
right?
I try to be. I try to be.
You're an entertainer by nature, aren't you, or by profession, kind of.
In theory, is more like is more like
Okay.
it. But yeah, I just enjoy the business and I enjoy the culture and I enjoy films and television and humor and making fun of Trump. It's a lot of work.
So there's no chance I'm going to get you to do a little soft shoe and sing a show tune.
No, no, no.
Well,
I
well,
mean, you could get me to do it, but don't you want people to continue listening to what we're doing
I could do
about
the
it?
same thing, but it wouldn't be well received. I know that
Yeah,
for sure.
exactly.
Um, Now, when people are listening to this show, I guarantee you they know who Kamala Harris has picked for VP. And I've talked about it many times. So when you're listening to this show, you're going to say it's like they don't even know who she picked because we don't know who she picked. We're doing the show before it was just decided, and I expect Monday at some point that decision will be made, and we're doing it on Sunday. So fucking cut us some slack, but we have some thoughts on it.
Yeah. Oh no, not only that. Wait, is it Monday or Tuesday they're announcing? Do you know for sure? I thought it
Uh,
was Tuesday. There was a press conference in
it,
Philadelphia.
well, it could be. Well, I thought their first event was on Tuesday, where they'd speak
Okay.
together. So I don't know. Maybe it
Okay.
is Tuesday, and if it is, maybe you didn't hear yet. But we can still talk about it because it's my show, and we talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about.
And we'll see if we're soothsayers or not.
Yeah.
Is I'd like
Well,
to think I am.
there's a couple of things that happened. We know Roy Cooper stepped out. Um, we talked about I've talked about Shapiro in Pennsylvania. He seemed like the odds-on favorite, but he's got some things too. I mean, he's a great candidate. If she picked him, it would be wonderful. I'm not going to bitch about anybody on that list that she picks. There is no bad choice. But Shapiro had a few problems. There was some question of his stance on Israel. Then we heard there was some sexual harassment within his office. Not him. He didn't do anything untoward,
Right.
but somebody's going to complain about how he handled it as the boss. Whether that's a thing or not, I don't know. Somebody's going to make some hay out of it. And I just question whether or not Kamala Harris needs any little thing to make it a mess for her.
Right. I think that that's not the only thing is the harassment case where someone was paid $300,000 to kind of just go away.
Yeah, that's a little
Um,
troubling.
that's troubling. There's a case from when he was attorney general that I don't know if it's coming out or it has come out, but it's kind of they're trying to bury it. But there was a murder that was swept under the rug as a suicide,
Oh,
and he was attorney general at the time. And apparently, the state of Pennsylvania wants to open the case again. It's just no.
well, the
And
thing,
as a Jew, I as I said earlier today on a post, I can fantasize about her taking a Jew just to watch all the anti-Semites head explode. But I really prefer Andy Bashir because he's like that good American, good old kind of Christian Southern Midwest kind of guy.
right? And I've said on the podcast, I'm kind of leaning toward Tim Walz. Of course, he's my governor, and I like him. Uh, but then we heard something earlier with Mark Kelly, and this may be an indicator or not, but he apparently put something up on his X account or whatever, and it was kind of making it sound like he was pulling out of it. and then he took it down real quick. So everybody's
Yeah.
making noise about that. I thought maybe Tim Walz, because this guy's as squeaky clean as you can possibly be. He's not the kind of guy that would be, and it doesn't, with Shapiro, it doesn't have to be that he did anything. It's just something in his orbit happened, and
Yeah,
he's going to
no,
take responsibility for it.
Kamala needs to ride this wave without any bumps,
Right.
without, she's going to have her own bumps, let alone the other bumps that come along with the party. But I have to say about Tim Walz, I thought he was amazing on camera. I think he's a great stand-up guy, except he's too progressive. And she's looked at as like a San Francisco liberal. And that's already pissing people off.
And
So
that's
she
what,
has to go take back a lot of her own statements,
and
which will be her bumps,
that's what I said about Tim Walz. He's accomplished so much in Minnesota for the liberals that whether he is or not, they're going to consider him or paint him as a progressive liberal. I don't think he is, but he accomplished so much, they're going to use that. So I think you're right that if there's one thing that's going to take him off the table, it's going to be that. And then you just gave me some information about somebody who you're feeling for. Um, so go ahead and
Which
tell
one?
us that because I thought it was compelling.
About Andy?
Yeah,
Two things about Andy. I was making a post just randomly at like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock today, just saying, I just want to go on the record before any decisions are made that I'm voting for Andy Bashir to be Kamala's pick. And then all of a sudden, a and it would have, some of you get notified on Twitter
right.
that his schedule had cleared for the following few days, just like randomly out of the blue. But this came in. Um, Sean Fain, who's the president of the United Auto Workers Union, reiterates support for Bashir as VP pick, calling a Harris Bashir ticket unbeatable. And just hearing that from what we know was one of Joe's greatest accomplishments, the first president to get on a picket line, the moment that he came out in support of Joe and she was part of that ticket, let's face it, just Joe and Kamala. And I just kind of think that that sounds like a home run.
It kind of does. I mean, when you look at Tim Walz and Mark Kelly, they're both very talented, very good guys, but they are the same age as Kamala. They're 60 years old. Now, to you
Right.
and me, that's not old. Those are just kids.
I wish I was,
But it's all about perception, and of course Shapiro is 51, so that's younger. And Andy
Mhm.
Bashir, I'm not sure how old he is. Let me just check here. But it makes sense what you're saying. Andy Bashir, the governor of Kentucky, that's conceivable. Now again, we don't know yeah, Andy's 46 years old. So he's got the
Yeah.
young guy feel. He's got maybe the Buttigieg feel, but he's not Buttigieg.
You know what feel he has for me? He's got the Clinton Gore vibe. He's got the Gore vibe, like solid from a state that just speaks to both parties. His history is working with extremely during COVID. Apparently, a lot of my followers live in Kentucky and they love him. They said he was great during COVID. He's doing great things for the economy of Kentucky. And when we think of Kentucky, we don't think of a good economy for some reason.
No.
The perception of Kentucky is like, straw out of people's mouths, sitting on the porch going, oh, I don't know, So
Yeah.
good for him to have that young, vibrant overall package. But
Well, and I
just,
think the one thing he also has going for him, he's a Democratic governor in a very red state. So somehow he's been able to convert some Republicans to vote for him.
yeah,
And maybe that's what they're thinking, especially with something we're going to talk about later, this new thing that they have with the Democrats. They're coordinating a new organization called Republicans for Harris.
I was
Um,
listening to a focus group about Andy Bashir. There's I don't know if you know the Bulwark. If you ever listen to the
Yeah.
Bulwark,
Yeah.
so the woman who runs those focus groups, I forget her name. She's awesome, but she did a thing talking to Kentuckians about Andy to get like their opinion, and so many Republicans said they voted for him. They love Andy. And the thing that's interesting about Andy is that people in that state know him as Andy. You know,
Right.
it's like, it's almost like that Andy Griffith kind of, you
Right.
feel like you can trust him like he's a neighbor. And that's something very folksy. And Kamala doesn't have that. She feels very buttoned up and like fabulous for sure. But he's got that down home thing about him.
Yeah, now I was kind of for a while there. I was thinking there was only three people on the list, and that's what people kept saying: Walls, Shapiro, and Kelly. They said those were the only three on there, but that doesn't mean there's only three there. That's just conjecture by media people. Andy Bashir has always been in the conversation, and as I listen to you now, I'm starting to get sold on that. And again, I'll remind folks who are listening to the podcast it's conceivable she's already made the decision by the time you hear this. So you are going to look like a fucking genius, or they're going to think
Who,
we're
me?
imbeciles.
No,
or
but
the
you want to know something? There's another thing that came out actually last week about Andy Bashir. He put out a tweet saying, I will always be grateful for the state of Kentucky. It almost made me cry because I had a
wow.
feeling that it was him. And a couple of the people were sending me like, it's happening, it's happening. So I feel like part of this who's going to be who's it's almost like they're playing like dating game or something,
Right.
one of these kind of who's going to get the rose from Kamala.
Right.
um it's almost like they're playing the press about it's going to be Josh. It isn't going to be Josh. So it's more exciting when somebody that they haven't spoken about becomes the one who gets the rose,
Well,
right?
well, I think the tipping point here is what you said about UAW. That was a big score by Biden.
Whoa.
Kamala got the endorsement from UAW, and UAW said that Kamala and Bashir was an unbeatable combination.
Right.
That says a lot about what's happening because when we're talking about politics, we're talking about support and we're talking about money,
Yeah.
and that's a big point.
Yeah, and the other thing about the UAW is that there was apparently before he came out to support that statement, that there's some kind of history with Andy and unions from the state that wasn't clear what that was, but that had to be cleaned up. So
Mhm.
for him to come out with that statement on Sunday is not by coincidence. Like, there's no reason on a Sunday this guy is like all of a sudden coming out with the thing. He's just
Yeah,
trying to feed the beast
right.
until the big reveal is. And it's like, how exciting is politics again?
Yeah, it is exciting and it's fun because it looks like we have a chance. Let me ask you this though, regardless of who she picked, um, and I honestly, like I said, whoever she picks, it's not going to uh, hurt her. It's only going to help her in different ways. Um, I personally think that Kamala is such a force of nature, um, and in past history too. The VP pick only has a little bit of an effect and a push in most elections. I heard it was like 18, 19% is really how it affects things. But Kamala is such a fucking boulder rolling down the hill. Anybody she picks is going to be overshadowed by her.
Yes, 100%. But here's the thing that I think this time around, because we're living in the most unprecedented moment in presidential history, where he's passed the baton. It's like I think that happened when Lyndon Johnson. Oh no, Ford became president when Nixon had to
Right,
leave town. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
So that's like a messy reason to go. But this is like the history. We are living continuously in history. It's like
Yeah,
since 2020. But I think that this particular shift in the dynamic and the effect it's having and the way it's galvanizing the Democratic Party, which was falling apart at the seams, and Joe was just bleeding voters every single day. For every bomb that was thrown in Gaza, we were losing more voters. It was just, that was
Right.
like, there was no way to put a dike in the dam. Is that what it is? A dike in the
Well, a
dam?
dike is kind of a dam. Put your thumb or
Thumb
finger
in
in the
the, yeah,
dike.
finger in the dike. Right? I
Yeah.
didn't want to say anything too sexual. I
Yeah, but and we know you,
had to
Abe.
do
We know you, Abe, and
it.
you got some cachet given your situation. You
I can
you
get
can
away with
you can say
it.
shit I can't say.
Right. So I think that this particular vice presidential pick, like that's why I think Josh would have been a challenge. Like somebody commented, like, "Oh, you're Jewish and you're saying it." I said that he has problems. And why should the Jew be the reason why? Are you kidding? Just people hate Jews enough. Let's not give everybody one more reason to hate the Jews. We're
Right,
not having our stellar moment on the planet.
right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Well, I think
Uh,
regardless of who she picked, she's going to win, and I think she's going to win big. And I think we see that every day. And I think that's what's exciting to a lot of people. Not only
yeah,
are we going to see a win, and Kamala Harris will be the first Black South Asian woman in the history of this country to be the president, which I'm very excited about. But she's going to win. I think she's going to win big. I mean, the Republicans are absolutely falling apart. They're falling.
yeah,
I put it this way: they can't help themselves. They're constantly stepping on their dicks, and no
yeah.
matter what they do, it's crazy.
Well, that's implying that they have a really big dick. So I'm taking that visual away and having
Yeah.
them just trip over their own, like, beards.
Well,
I don't know anything but that. But can I say one thing that I'm
yeah.
concerned about, which I think it's still too early, of course, is that when you go to Kamala's website, there's no platform yet. So I think a lot of us need to hold off until we see what the platform is. Because when you go look at Trump's ridiculous website, you see like the doom and gloom, the list of doom and gloom that they're planning to kind of be focused on as their administration. But it depends who Kamala hires to do things like her foreign intelligence people. Is she going to keep the head of the army guy? Like it all depends. She has to give America what her platform is.
Well, I think what Kamala Harris has to do is exactly what Lyndon Johnson did. Now, Lyndon Johnson, prior to becoming vice president and then ultimately president, this motherfucker was a racist thug. He was. But then he changed. And he changed for legitimate reasons because, he had some experiences with people of color. But he knew John F. Kennedy was a fairly loved president. And even whether it was in his mindset to do it or not, he knew he had to finish out what Kennedy was doing. And when he took over at that time, he was probably the most productive president as far as getting bills passed, civil rights and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So he did the right thing. And that's what Kamala's really got to do because Joe is a beloved president. He accomplished a lot. And she did say about building the middle class out instead of coming from the top. So she said the right things, but I think take up, not to carry water for Joe Biden and do what he had planned to do in the beginning would be a mistake. And I don't think she would do that because I think she's more progressive than Joe Biden.
Right.
So
But she's
hopefully,
got to, yeah, but she's got to put out her, what, these are my policies, this is my story with,
yeah,
you know, uh, poor people. And I read an article that they think one of her first things is going to be childcare. Like,
yeah,
and so, like, how would the Republicans argue with like taking it? Like, we thought you want kids.
they will though. They will
Yeah,
argue
well,
about it.
of course they're going to, because they're so horrible.
I mean, they
But
voted against the expansion of the child tax credit just recently, a few days ago.
yeah, a few
So
days ago.
So
They're
you know,
so evil. Her ad about the border is so genius. Did you see it?
no, I didn't.
Oh, it's so good. She's like getting out of a plane, it's like opening shot, Kamala Williams, like, and she's like, um, Trump, I'm going to work on fixing the border. That is a priority of our administration. Trump stop. And then there's a picture of Trump looking, Trump stopped the border. I'm going to do with the border. He stopped the border. So it's really good. You should look for it online. It's a good ad.
One of the things, and I'm going to ask you because you're in the entertainment industry to a certain extent, like you said, um, but you have an eye for this too, based on reading
Mm-hmm.
your book and knowing how you think. The one thing I like about Kamala, and I think it's important in this day and age, when you saw Joe do something, it was, profound and you liked him for it and you saw the integrity. But I think Kamala has a little sense for the theatrics too, which I think is important in this day and age. Do you feel
Right.
that way?
Yeah, and I think she and the people around her understand the power of where we are in the internet and social media and to embrace that right away,
Right.
especially because we were bleeding the Gen Z as for the past year because of the war. So the first place to go just to kind of establish footing with those people was to do that, that green logo, which
Yeah.
is Brat, it's a Brat Summer, which I'm sure me and you don't know what a brat. We think of brats, we think of like annoying little kids, which I'm sure was still right,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, so it's that she and her people understand what needs to happen from a visual marketing standpoint, whereas Joe's people, and apparently Joe is surrounded by the same people for like years and years and
Right.
years, who are not voracious, you know absorbers of social media information and movies and theater and television. And like, I try to be as up to the minute as possible. I will recommend everybody watch on Netflix Dairy Girls, but I digress.
Well, and I think it's fair to assume, given their relationship, which seems to be very good, even though Joe's kind of in the background now doing his, I don't know, his presidential shit, like getting prisoners released from
Stuff
Russia,
done.
just stuff like that. I am sure that he is giving advice along this campaign and how they should put together the platform and who they should be tied into this. I think
Right.
I think he's going to be doing that because he's got a legacy. I mean, he's got a legacy from the 4 years, but he wants that to see that legacy carry over. And I think he's on the right track. And I think she'd be open to any help she can get. This kind of got thrust upon her out of fucking nowhere. And we're 2 weeks into it and it's going great, but she's got to keep it rolling.
I have to say, I almost disagree because
Okay.
I think this has been in the brew for longer, not necessarily maliciously or undermining. I have a feeling that cooler heads have been prevailing to say, let's just have a few plan B things in
Right.
place.
Right. I
Like,
think
I
you're
don't
probably
think it
right.
was like, of course, in my heart of hearts, I hope they just planned this whole thing to the minute, like playing the Stradivarius to the second to the Sunday at 12 o'clock to be on the news when that's me thinking that the Dems actually know how to do something like message. And I don't want to get ahead of myself,
You,
but I definitely think
you think Joe was sitting in the background going,
yeah,
we're going to get these
yeah,
motherfuckers really
yeah,
good.
right. He's like Dr. Evil. That's what the gentleman, that's so hilarious when the Republicans call him Dr. Evil. Like, yeah, but he has no cognitive, but I thought he's Dr. Evil. But yeah, he can't talk, They don't know what they're saying. I do have to say one thing about who um Kamala is going to hire for her. Well, I'm going to open this up. So, who's going to be her national security advisor is very important. Currently, it's Philip Gordon,
Okay.
and he's his second in command with her. The deputy is a woman, Rebecca Listener. They are, fabulous. They worked for Obama. They're very big on what has been established and going on, not only with Ukraine, but very involved with the Israel-Iran thing. So I just was reading a weird article about Phil Gordon, which would imagine has to be with her as well, that they feel like the reason why the whole Iran deal kind of fell apart was because, or just when they were, in other words, people accuse Biden of giving Iran the money that has caused this war to happen.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's true. I think that's nobody knows anything when it comes to that kind of stuff. But we knew about that $10 billion that Trump's been saying. But we never had any real final answers on that. But it would be almost like worth identifying what's her position in Ukraine, which is really important,
Right.
Israel, and in the funding for all the things that they need. So I think that's going to be an important issue for a lot of different people,
Right. Right.
not only for Gen Z, but for a lot of Republicans who are like kind of war happy.
A few nights ago, I had Andy on the show, and he's a legit Gen Z, and it was interesting to get his point of view, especially about, it's real easy for two old guys like me to talk about, oh, the Gen Zs just love Kamala. Well, we don't know fucking anything other than what we read. So it was good to hear that from an actual Gen Zer that for whatever reason, they are solidly behind her. I think they like the new freshness of it, the
Right.
the toughness of Kamala. You know what? I've said this in the last three podcasts, and I want to bounce it off you because I've been amazed by this. Kamala, one of the reasons why Kamala is so popular right now is because she's that one person who we know will fight back and kick Donald Trump's ass. But she's been able to do it without coming off like the angry black woman or the bitchy woman, and she's still beloved, and people just want to hug her. But she's a
Right.
beast when it comes to the fight. And that's an incredible balance that she struck here that I don't know how she did it because there's everybody just waiting for a woman to be bitchy. There's some
Right.
people out there waiting for that.
I mean, I can't wait to see some of Senator Harris back out on
Yeah.
I want to see some of that too, especially if there is ever a debate between those two, because that's where she has to deliver the goods. That's
Well,
where the fly. Wait, wasn't she the? It was just her and Mike Pence with the fly on the head.
right.
Remember?
That had to be
That
some
was
evil.
classic shit, man.
It was classic shit. And when she asked questions of Kavanaugh during the meetings with the Supreme Court nominees, she tore his ass apart.
That
But
was so good.
let's talk about the debate. That's up for debate. Um, we know there's a contractual debate set for September 10th on ABC. Immediately, Donald Trump said, I don't want no part of that. They know me. I don't have to do that. And we know why he did that because he's scared to death. And then
Hmm.
Kamala kicked it up a notch and taunted him a bit by saying, if you have something to say about me, say it to my face. So now
Yeah,
Donald Trump's in a quandary. He's being made to look afraid or chicken, and a narcissist cannot handle that for the life of him. So now he has to find a way out. And his way out is to make up an event that happens to be 6 days before the September 10th, but do it on Fox. Except he's never contacted Kamala about it. And I bet he didn't even contact Fox about it at first. He was just trying to say it so she'd say no. And he's doing exactly what we thought he'd do. Oh, she's not showing up because she's afraid. She's trying to divert, distract, do whatever he can to not look like a chicken for September 10th. But at least Kamala's going, look, you want to talk about other debates? We'll talk about other debates after we have the one you signed on.
right. No, no, no. He's PAB, honey.
PAV.
PAB.
Oh,
Pussy ass
pussy ass
bitch.
bitch. Yeah.
Hey, what do you mean?
I thought you said V. Yeah,
No, no,
PAV.
PAV. No, VAG is match the vag, but that's like a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I just have to complain about a lot of the people in the Jewish community that are very wealthy are total Trump supporters. And they are like direct messaging me, like, you've got to come on the other side and whatever. And I'm like, first of all, I was raised better than that.
Yeah.
The fact that you want to be aligned with the party of Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're Jewish. Does that mean you have space lasers? I have the most hilarious text with these people as I'm like, what I do on TikTok, I'm doing directly to these people. It's just, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you want to be in bed with people that are criminals, lunatics, people that need to be lobotomized, and this is who your party is? No.
Well, maybe you can explain this to us. Why would a presumably educated, successful, wealthy Jewish person want to side with Donald Trump? I mean, we've all seen what we've seen, unless you don't watch TV or read the newspapers or anything. What is it that draws them to side with him?
Their better excuse is that his policies are better for America.
Do you ever
And
ask him
I
what
just,
policies those are? Because I don't know of any
well,
policies.
of course, he's going to close the border and he's going to, lower everyone's taxes. It's kind of like, no, so far, the only thing that we know he did is lowered the taxes for rich people. And
Right.
that's a lot of the people that are like in my earbud going, hey, you should cross
So it's all
over. I'm like,
financial.
hello, I have $20 left to my name. Did you ever try selling a book and doing a documentary? It's not a get rich quick scheme.
So
I'm
so
not on that same path.
just
I'm
as
on
a
like the poor man's path.
just as a commercial break here, you see the book behind Abe here, Won't Be Silent. I've listened to the audiobook. Awesome book. Abe needs to eat now and again. So buy the fucking book. You can go to
Please.
Amazon, Won't Be Silent, buy the goddamn book. And if you're too lazy to read like me, get the audiobook.
The
Abe
audiobook's
reads it.
doing really well. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
I
love the
like, yeah,
audiobook. I don't
yeah.
read much because I'm a lazy bastard. And I acknowledge that. But the audiobook, I'm sitting on a plane. I'm going to, I can't remember. I was going to the
That's when you're going
Key
to
West.
Florida, weren't you?
Huh?
Yeah.
Key
You were going
West,
to
I went.
Florida, right, right.
Yeah, I wasn't going to any of the hot spots for Republicans. But um, yeah, get the book, Amazon. You can get it there.
Please.
Buy it.
And
Abe,
let me know that you do. Go to, the website is on the book, but I have been creating these great dialogues and interrelationships with people who have gone through similar things. It's this whole other aspect of joy that's coming as a byproduct of the
well,
book.
and that's a good point because, whether it be an author or somebody on TikTok who has a lot of followers. Um, Whenever somebody DMs me, I try to answer, even if it's a small answer, because so many people try to DM creators or email, and they don't get any response. Like I've said before, I have a few followers. So if I reach out to somebody who has a similar amount of followers, I would think, answer me back, but nobody does. Abe does. The
Oh, I
woman,
definitely do. I love it.
Arlene Unfiltered, who's on yesterday's show, I said, "Hey, I'd like you to be on the show." She said, "Cool, that's great." But a lot of the big creators don't. If you like Abe, and if you don't, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking. But
Really.
if you do like Abe, you'll be able to probably enter into a conversation with him. And once you listen to his book, you'll have a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
you'll have a lot of questions. And I'm telling you, the most unexpected people have been direct messaging me. I had a similar thing with my parent, when I was an overweight child, and I understand that there's just lots of universal issues that kind of come up for certain people. Anyway, by all means, commercial over, but please go check it out. Won't Be Silent on Amazon.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you don't, we're going to have Abe on every night bugging you about this shit. It's going to turn into that like
I'll be
that.
like, please.
Anyway, we were talking about Kamala
Debates.
and the debate. So what do you think is going to happen there? I don't think Kamala's. It'd be
She
funny.
better not show up on the fourth.
But you know what would be funny? Not say she's going to show up and then show up on the fourth because she could kick his ass anywhere.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm just saying she shouldn't, just because that's like, why give in to him and his party bullshit?
Right.
But if she would show up unannounced, he wouldn't be there either.
No.
He's going to be on the golf course,
But at the same
rolling
time,
around.
Kamala will be there on September 10th, whether he's there or not,
Yeah, and
which will
then
be
she
an
gets an
embarrassment
hour
to
of
him.
free television,
Yeah.
national television free. Oh, he's running.
Yeah. Well, I think he said I want it on Fox on September 4th, mainly because he thought she would say no, because there's no reason for her to say yes. And then that gave him the option to say, well, she's afraid of me. Like anybody's afraid of you
It's
now.
going over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, it is. It was a ploy, and it was a typical Donald Trump ploy that maybe once worked, but uh, Arlene on the podcast yesterday, she said he's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, this big, powerful Wizard of Oz until you pull the curtain back. Well, the
Yeah,
curtain's been
exactly.
pulled back on Donald Trump at this point.
I mean, the thing is, the headlines for this week are like Trump implodes. You know what I mean? Like it's like the Trump implodes headline on Huffington Post. I think it was yesterday or this morning. Is like that is not the kind of thing he's used to. That
No,
has never been what we've heard ever
no.
since he entered the scene.
But he had a fix to it. He had a fix to it. His idea didn't turn out so well, but I knew what he was thinking. I'm going to go to a black journalist convention and I'm going to say racist shit. That's got to be a score for me. Was that the I watched it on clips of it, and then I heard somebody talking about it, and they said it was hard to watch. It was like watching a baby crawl across the freeway at night. And that's
That's a good visual. I actually I watched it like on C-SPAN, and two things. One, of course, baby on the highway for sure. But on some level, I think it's the same. It reminded me as I was watching it, I thought to that moment at the debate with Joe Biden in August of 2020, when it's stand back and stand by. I think he
right.
was doing that same whistle to the racists to say, okay, we're going to have a race war, kids. Planning starts now, because he was being laughed at in the audience and whatever.
He was
And
being
I'm
laughed at.
afraid that that's what his whole thing is. And I'm afraid that I'm not afraid. Let me take that word out. I have a feeling that they're psychotically, because you hear them attacking us all the time on social media. The
Right.
Civil War, bruh, that crowd they're in planning mode. They're definitely good at planning shit, because when you really look at the aerial view of January 6th, there was some planning go. There was some like thought put
But
in.
but here's the thing. They've had opportunities where they got mad and they said they were going to come out if this happens, the indictments, the convictions, and nobody shows up. I think part of the issue about January 6th, over and above Donald Trump was in power and they had some protection. They also had help in D.C. from members of Congress who will be seeing indicted at some point after the elections. They were coordinated by people who are experts at coordinating. I don't think the red meat eating, mouth breathing pieces of shit have enough time to coordinate going to the bathroom and having breakfast in the proper order. I don't think
Right,
they have
right.
that capability. So it's a matter of, is there going to be anybody in Washington that wants to dip their toe back into that after what may be coming their way after 2021?
I mean, I'm just going to say that I refuse, as much as I would like to think it's a slam dunk with Kamala. I want to just leave a piece of me to remember what a bunch of criminals we're dealing with.
Yeah.
What a bunch of snowflake criminals. That's a dangerous combination. you know, their their egos are so fragile that they're already heartbroken. I'm sure they're already starting to. They're heartbroken that you're getting things like implode. Trump
Right.
implodes. Like they're already feeling that. That's like their daddy.
Right.
That's like their father. That's like that father issue. That's that whole, they're in love with him. It's not just, oh, they admired or they drank the Kool-Aid. And you've seen endless times, they want to sleep with him. They want to touch him and kiss him. You could throw up, but that is what they all want. There was a woman who had, I forget what the t-shirt said. It was like, Trump's parking garage or something like he could, Trump could park his something in my hoochie garage or whatever it was. It was like horrible, but like they want to sleep with him and
Here's the
kiss
th-
him.
here's the thing that upsets me. When I look back to the 70s when I was a young man and unattached and stuff, where were all these women with such a low bar then? I couldn't find those women.
Well, you were not living in New York City.
Well, that may be the problem. That may be the problem.
Yeah, starts with moving into the big city. No. I mean, but you lived in Minneapolis then,
Right.
right? No,
I
I
grew
mean
up in,
that was a big city. Believe me,
it's
no
big
angels
enough.
alone.
Big
Yeah,
enough.
no. New York City was like literally like Sodom and Gomorrah. It was wild. Are you kidding? But
And you can
yeah,
read about Sodom and Gomorrah in his
in my
book,
book won't be
Won't Be
silent.
Silent. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that we should be prepared for the worst always. And as much as her energy is flowing, that's why I think there's a great, I mentioned it earlier, the podcast that was on Friday from the Bulwark. They were talking about this conversation about the VP choices, and they were all stuck on Josh, but I wasn't. But um, they were saying that there was something about, now I forgot my point, but they were just, all right, forget it.
Well, this
I
is
had
where
a senior moment.
well with Abe and I, we are of like mind for most things, but there are some things that we don't agree on. Like you said, plan for the worst. I personally plan for the best always because I
No,
think
you
I
don't.
get more the best if I plan for it. If that's what I put out in front of me, that's what will come back to me. And I understand your point of view. I got a wife that looks at everything as the worst because she's scared about this and that and the other thing. And like when Joe Biden stepped aside, I said, "Honey, Joe Biden stepped aside," and she started weeping. She was upset. I go, "Hold on a second. Let's just wait and see what happens. Let's not react until we know what's going to happen." And I didn't know what was going to happen, but that's my nature to stand back and go, "This will be
Right.
okay.
No,
This will be okay."
that's definitely your jam for sure. But can I just level the playing field as
You
to why
you
I am that way?
you want to bring the tone down to a more defeatist level. Go ahead.
When your parents survived the Holocaust,
I understand.
you knew where I was going.
I knew. Yeah. What do I say to that? What do I say to that?
Nothing. It's the greatest argument starter. It's like
We're
my
la-
parents were in the Holocaust. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, but that definitely, you're always thinking that you have to have extra food in the fridge or something. Because you don't know when the other shoe is going to drop. And
right.
that's been my whole life. And did that stop me from being another kind of person to experience life in another certain kind of way? Potentially, but I look at it as like that was this is the gift that I have, and this is kind of how take it on ultimately as the opportunity. But when you're growing up with like always wondering like, are they gonna come get us? You know what I mean? You just never know.
What's weird though is when I see you on TikTok or have you on the podcast, um, you seem like an immensely positive guy. I mean, you and I are old enough where we've gone through every trial, tribulation, every possible thing, every tragedy you could possibly go through, and
Every
yet
pimple.
yet still here we are. And
Yeah.
while you kind of look at things in a more, I don't want to say defeatist because that's not what it is, but you seem positive every time I talk to you. Is that just
Yes.
a role you're playing, or is that
No, no,
really how
no.
you feel?
I'm a diehard optimist, but I
Hmm.
always like to reserve just a little pocket of, oh shit. You know what I mean?
You're hedging your bets, is what you're doing.
Hedging my bet. But I don't bet against myself. I'm not
Right.
betting against Kamala. I'm just more than that, I'm preparing for the war against the criminals.
Right.
You
You're
know, it's
you're
like Gotham. You know what I mean? It's like we're on the side of Batman, but there's a bunch of schmucks coming out from under the sewers that we have to be ready for.
a metaphor would be that you're um, filling your root cellar with rutabagas just in case.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I'm a more shoot from the hip
It's
and
like that line in my book that I just think is so hilarious. You know, I was a fat kid. My mother, who had survived the Holocaust, was like stuffing us with food. Always,
right.
so I felt like my mother was stuffing us. She felt like if she would stuff me with food so that in the event the Germans would have a resurgence, I wouldn't have to scrounge around in the woods for a radish.
Yeah, you could survive for a week or two on that.
I could go on like pure fat.
So she was basically making you her root cellar,
Yes.
stuffing you with fruits and vegetables and
A
stuff like that.
career choice at a young age.
Yeah. Well, Abe, we're going to take a quick break and
Okay.
we'll be right back. So stick with us. We'll be back shortly.
Okay.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have Abe Gurko on the show. Again, just because we're starting out here, buy the goddamn book. Won't be silent. It's a great book. I read it, and I don't read books. I don't have time to read books. I'm watching news all the goddamn time. So buy the book, and then Abe can get another shipment of ramen.
Yes, I'm down to the ramen. You think I'm kidding?
You know, you know, the thing is that people don't know. We talk about politics and that sort of stuff, but there's an entirely different show that goes on prior to and between the breaks here because we talk on all other kind of subjects that maybe we'll do that sometime because I think it's just as interesting and entertaining. But since democracy's hanging by a thread, we
Right,
probably
right,
have to
right.
focus on the
No, we can do an episode of Green Room Idol,
yeah, yeah,
insider trading conversations.
that sounds good. One of the things I wanted to bring up because it's a big story and it kind of gets buried. People don't really understand what's going on. We know the Supreme Court gave Donald Trump and every future president, including Joe Biden, immunity over official acts. But they didn't tell us what those official acts are. They sent it back to Judge Chutkin, the federal judge that's supposed to hear this case about January 6th. And now she's got to figure out what's going to happen, what's official, what's unofficial. Now she has the jurisdiction back, she has the power back, and she's starting this thing up, and it's really going to officially start on August 16th. But even as of yesterday, she was already denying motions, the hundreds of motions that Donald Trump has made, including him wanting to dismiss the case because now he has immunity. She said, fuck no. And so Donald Trump continues to lose these motions. But what are your thoughts about now her getting it back? What worries you or what excites you about that?
Well, I've been disappointed every turn.
Right.
So I excited is nothing that I feel yet. I'm reserving all my enthusiasm for what we have to do to get Kamala in the White House.
Right.
I would like to think that she's going to be the one to outsmart Trump's legal team. And I'd like to think that there's going to be some kind of not just a slap on the wrist. I mean, so far, he's almost seems invincible, even though he's been accused, has to pay millions of dollars to people. It's almost like you don't even believe he's ever going to have to meet his maker that way.
Right. Right. Well, here's what I would tell you to be excited about. It goes without saying that this court case will not happen before the election. We're not going to get
Right.
a verdict or anything like that. That's going to happen after the election. However, in order to determine what's official and what's unofficial, Chutkin is going to have a bunch of hearings starting on August 16th. And when they have these hearings, she's going to make everybody bring evidence, hear live testimony as if it was the trial. So while we won't get a verdict, we'll get a lot of evidence in the mainstream, especially if it's
Right.
public testimony. That'll come, and we won't hear it live. It won't be on TV, but we will get the information from the reporters that are in the room. And this is where Donald Trump and the Republicans always fuck up. They never think past the end of their nose. We want to delay it. We want to delay it. But now, even though the trial won't happen before the election, all the evidence is probably going to come out. And that should have an impact on the election. It would be more lead weights on an already sinking ship.
I would just like to see Kamala debate him once, maybe twice, and just him looking like a total basket case.
Yeah. Yeah. He does appear to be that way. I mean, they had this
Oh,
they
that's nothing new. But her making him look, you know what I mean? No, even the way he talks back to all of the black women who were like the court cases with him, the way he disrespected them, like he can't do that to her. Like he can do it to those journalists, but in that room, like he can't do to Kamala what he did to Hillary.
no,
Like that
no.
cannot happen because that is going to incite all sorts of bad news. It's going to really incite. But again, he wants to incite a race war. I'm convinced. I'm
Yeah.
convinced he is not going to be happy until he is sitting there back in some kind of golf cart watching, because he's not going to be in the White House watching. That's for sure. But just I just feel like he wants that completion
Right.
because he's that crazy.
Well, and it's maybe his only option because now he's losing the race and it doesn't look good. I think the worm is kind of turned here though because he was kind of the media darling. Anything he did got publicity, but now it's turned to Kamala. She's the exciting one. She's the new one now, and he everything he's getting is more negative. I mean, we had
Right,
this
right.
we had this rally in Atlanta. It was weird. Kamala was there first, and then Donald Trump was there. Kamala packed the place. The place was absolutely electric. Donald Trump did not pack the place. There were plenty of empty seats, and it wasn't nearly as electric. And just to add the cherry on top, he insulted and attacked a very popular Republican governor of Georgia, which is not a smart. That's the second worst thing to going into a black convention and making racist remarks. The next thing he does, he goes to Atlanta and talks shit about a Republican governor that everybody loves. I mean, he can't help himself.
And his wife.
And
He
his wife.
badmouthed his wife.
And
That's
that
like,
that kind
and
of
and
set.
the yeah, but Kemp is no, what's his name from Texas?
Oh,
What's that?
yeah, yeah. Why can't I say
Ted
his name?
Cruz.
Abbott.
No, Ted Cruz. Remember
Ted
when he
Cruz.
made fun of Ted Cruz's wife?
Right, right.
He just rolled over and played dead. Kemp put out a statement right away and says, "Keep your hands off my family.
Yeah.
You big rolling stink of horror, you."
Well, and we know that Kemp has a shred of integrity because he was
A
kind of behind.
shred.
He was kind of behind the not allowing Donald Trump to steamroll over the Georgia Secretary of State and the state of Georgia to get those 11,780 votes.
Yeah, but he's still going to vote for him in November. I mean, how do you justify that? He's come
Yeah.
out and said that.
Has he said that?
Yeah, I just don't understand that.
Well, it's because these people are in these clubs, and this is really one thing. I'm a Democrat, so I always vote Democrat, even if it's Charles Manson. I'm a Republican. I will vote for a Republican, even if it's Donald Trump. And I don't understand that mentality. I personally, I've said I don't belong to a party. I believe in truth over lies, facts over bullshit, justice over injustice. If you can't give me that, I'm not voting for you. I don't care what club you're in.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm trying to think if I ever voted for a Democrat, for a Republican. I don't know. I'd like to, in theory, I'd like to think that I'm willing to, but definitely not this time around. But I get accused all day long. I'm telling you, whether it's through Instagram or through what's it called? Through people accuse me of being you. That you vote your heart and not your reason. I mean, that's so okay. Is that bad? You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
yeah. And I question whether these people who think they're voting with reason really understand what they're voting for. Because, like we've said, when we talk about Republicans, especially the MAGA fucks, they constantly vote against their own better interest. So reason really doesn't come into it. It's about a cult of a cult, or just being brainwashed into believing. I mean, Donald Trump will tell you what he's going to do, and it could be horrible for you, and then he will tell you that it's good for you, and you only believe the second part of it. You don't listen to the
right.
first part, and that's the problem with Republicans, or the Republicans um, that just vote Republican. However, don't you get a sense that there's been a shift too in Republicans in this country? There are some people that just can't, Republicans that just cannot stomach Donald Trump.
Well, I think we're going to see a new crop. I don't know how big it is, but in the same way, in 2016, we had very bright never Trumpers that are still to this day either have joined the Democratic Party or have become independents and are totally supporting the Democratic ticket,
Right.
even though somebody like Michael Steele, for whatever reason, is still holding on to his Republican, ID card, but he's like an MSNBC, bloviator. But I think there's a, I think there are people that are just really turned off by his horrible language, the abortion issue that they're all kind of rallying around and trying to bury. They took it off the Republican platform, but they're not changing their mind about it. They just took it off the platform because they knew that was going to be a talking point that would just be monopolized the week during the Republican National Convention.
Well, they can take abortion off the platform, but everybody knows they're the ones responsible for it. Donald Trump's on videotape taking credit for doing it. They can take it off the platform, but people aren't stupid. They know where it came from. And the same with Project 2025. Oh, we're going to back off of that, even though Donald Trump's name's in there 300
He
times.
mentioned it at the Georgia rally. He's like thanking two people who friggin' are in the Heritage Foundation who are specifically involved in Project 2025. He's a pathological liar. The fact that anyone supports them it's a personality defect of yours. Like, I speak to the American public when I say this. You would never in your personal life let somebody like that in your home.
No, no, absolutely not.
You wouldn't let your daughter go out on a date with somebody like that.
Well, the thing that amazes me, by whether it be wealthy or successful people that support Donald Trump, the man is absolutely an imbecile. I mean, I don't
Uh,
know, and I'm not just putting him down because I don't like Donald Trump. Just listen to him talk. Look at how he makes decisions and how he flips on that decision. He doesn't think about anything. He just spews whatever comes out of his mouth at that moment because he thinks he can spin it, or be a brilliant orator and get people to believe him. He really believes that, and he says some stupid shit, and it always flies in his face, and he doesn't learn a lesson from that.
I mean, just the fact that, when we all adopted the word weird about Republicans, like just the fact that they tried to deflect that. Have you listened to yourself lately? Any of you? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's one to talk about what's weird. It's all of them. Lauren Boebert, you can't, anyone you name in that party at this point that hasn't like just hidden themselves so effectively. I mean, Lindsey Graham, you're not weird. Excuse me, like it's just it's almost like, and I've said this to you before, it's embarrassing. It's
It's
not even horrifying. It's embarrassing.
it
They
is.
are embarrassing people. They are shameful, embarrassing morons.
Well,
All of them. Even
it,
the rich ones that have like $1 billion. Like, what's his name who owns X? They're embarrassing.
how is it? People used to think Elon Musk was the smartest guy in the world. He took a relatively thriving app, a social media platform, and ran it into the ground. He cut a deal to give Donald Trump $45 million a month, and he backed out of it. It's just
It's
like you.
just none of
It's
it makes sense. It's because of these things that two rational human beings, you and I, sit here and just think there's no way Kamala can lose based on the
yeah.
fact that we're dealing with defective people who have rationalized themselves into the toilet.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Lindsey Graham, and we haven't heard much from him lately. He's got his own problems. But he was on Fox News. I think it was Fox News. And he
Yeah,
was basically begging Donald Trump to stop saying racist things. Think about that. A sitting U.S. senator is begging a former president, who's now also a candidate, to just not say racist things. How is that not believed to be just fucking stupid? That's crazy that that would happen.
I mean, it's almost like Kevin McCarthy dodged the best bullet he possibly could because this is no place you want to be. I don't think, and Mike Johnson, I mean, these people are just, they're embarrassing.
Yeah.
He's embarrassing. And you're still sticking up for this putz? He's a putz.
And what I don't understand is when Donald Trump crashes and gets buried under 10 feet of dirt because he crashes so hard, these people that stood by him after this November election, they still have a life and a career they have to live. How do they ever get away from that? How do they ever wipe off the stink of Donald Trump? I don't see how they can ever do that because, as far as I'm concerned, anybody who I talk to that supported Donald Trump, and if after the fact, when it's not fashionable anymore, and they say, "Oh, I never liked Donald Trump," I'm going to say, "You lying motherfucker." I'm going to
Yeah.
stick it back on them because they deserve it.
I mean, you know what it really, the only thing you can compare it to, and you know where I'm going with this one, I hope, is that it's like the Germans who worked in the camps that just were doing their jobs. How did they go back after the war to rebuild their own sense of who they are? How did they look at their families? And once the cat was out of the bag, so the cat's going to come out of the bag, you
Right.
know, and those people have to come to terms. That's their own spiritual journey that they have to go on. They should not be, and I believe in forgiveness, but I think that they need not have those jobs. I think they just have to go into the night
Right.
quietly, the
Right.
same way the Germans, a lot of those praised Germans that weren't arrested had to go and take simple little farm jobs because they've been so hopped up on goofballs and like violence and like that's that whole thing that comes with that territory. It's a mindset.
I was going to joke and say, there you go, Abe, pulling a Holocaust card
Pulling out
again.
the Holocaust again.
And when we
When it
laugh,
works, it really
right?
works.
And I don't want people to think you and I are
No, no,
laughing
no.
about
We're
the
not. No,
Holocaust.
no, no. Oh, right.
Uh,
Of all people.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. But the point is that those Germans, they all tried the same thing, and these Republicans will try the same thing. I was just taking orders. I was just doing
I
what I
was
was
just
told to.
taking orders, told what I was due. And it's almost like when other people around you are doing it, it's that part of that being part of. That's why these kids are in these encampments and doing all that protesting because they're like they were stuck home during the COVID thing and now they're back in college and they feel like they're part of the thing. They
Right.
need to feel part of a community. And I want to say one thing that I really want, that I really am shocked that nobody else has said up until me today. When we look at these encampments and all these horrible people with towels on their heads threatening Jews to try to get into their own campuses to go to the libraries and stuff,
Right, right,
right? These encampments. What is the actual meaning of the word colonize?
right.
Do I need to explain that to anybody?
I think you should because I'm dumb as shit.
Okay, here you go. One second. The word colonize is to settle in and take control of a land that is out of your own jurisdiction.
Hmm.
That is a university. Those are colonizers.
Right.
And you are what? Trying to make a point about what colonizing is by colonizing? That's like the asshole version of your argument. You know what I mean? And it's almost like you're accusing people of being something as we live in uber colonized land. You know what I mean? Like,
Now,
shut up.
that seems like a really familiar scenario. Who else does that? Oh, Trumplafucks do that. Oh, the
Yeah,
pedophiles, and they're the only ones getting arrested.
right,
Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and
right, right.
but the Democrats are the ones that are doing it. And again, I'm not taking side on the Gaza thing.
No.
My
It's not about taking sides, but it's about you can't live in America and call anything colonizing. If
no,
you disagree with colonizing, then you need to move off this particular country.
right. I,
And
I've said this before about Gaza and Israel. The Israeli people are good people. The Gaza people in Gaza, the Palestinians, are good people. Hamas is a terrorist organization,
and Bibi is an asshole.
and Bibi is a war criminal.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The Israeli people and the Gaza people in the Gaza Strip, they're fucking collateral damage. We don't have to punish Israeli people or Palestinians. We have to punish
No.
the
I mean,
people
the
that
war
are
has to end.
creating this. Yeah.
It's just horrible. But like, we're entering a new phase of. See, when I lived in Holland in 2001 for 2 years, they were starting to take in refugees from, I believe, Syria.
Uh-huh.
And now, and you know, this they multiply like bunnies. They make the Orthodox Jews look like frigid. You know what I mean? They're like jumping out more babies than friggin', you know. So now it's uncontrollable. And you're seeing what's happening in England now. I don't know if you see that on TikTok as much as on Instagram.
Yeah.
They're attacking now. The white Brits are starting to protest against how they're all on the dole from the UK government too. It's just this horrible situation. So it's happened in Germany, it's happened in Paris, it's happened in England, it's happening in Amsterdam, it happened in Poland. Poland's new president's like, border is closed. Bye bye, out.
Yeah.
And you know, like they're causing problems here.
Yeah.
And believe me, after Trump won and he was putting in the Muslim ban, me and a group of people started in his Jews for Muslims group to kind of deal with all that backlash that was happening. Like, that would never be the reverse. You know what I mean? That's fucked up.
Well,
Like,
so
I've proven that I'm willing to put a hand out. And if I'm going to get it slapped, that's the only chance I'm going to do it.
the problem with the Republicans, they think everything is a black and white issue. It's either bad or it's good, or it's yes or it's no. Close the border, let nobody in. And that doesn't make total sense. There has to be some kind of reasonable resolution to the border situation. And Joe Biden tried to do that with the Democrats with the bipartisan border bill. They still keep trying to say Joe kept the border open. Well, he tried. The only person keeping the border open now is Donald Trump. And
No,
that has to be
100%.
laid at his feet because that's the only thing separating an actual stringent border bill, the most stringent in history, of having that in place and not having that in place. You can
You
argue with
should,
me all day long, but it's Donald Trump.
yeah, you should definitely look for that ad that Kamala came out with. I keep saying it the wrong way. I'm gonna
What,
get haters.
what do you think? What do you think as a media consumer? What do you think about what Kamala is doing and the Democrats are doing with the media and commercials. And I mean, they've got all kinds of fucking material they can take
Oh,
from.
it's delicious. It's just high energy. They have the right people. I hope they don't, two things. I hope they don't lean too heavily into celebrity land because that was
Yeah,
what Obama did. And, uh, it's we the people. When Kamala was running for president in 2019, there's a photo I keep posting up about she's on a farm talking to a farmer in jeans and sneakers.
right,
And it's this really great image of somebody running for president. And that Kamala needs to come out again.
right, right.
And if not, then that's where Andy Bashir easily comes in. I don't know about Josh on the farm all that much. And the other two guys, you know,
Yeah, who's well, well,
just
well. Tim Walz does have a background on
he was a
farms and stuff.
teacher, wasn't he?
He was a teacher, he was a football coach, but he came from a
Yeah,
small
football
town in
coach.
Nebraska, and he's got some farming in his background.
Oh, he
Yeah, no,
does
no, I
good.
think you're right. Now, I will make one exception um, regarding a celebrity endorsement. I don't want to hear from George Clooney. I don't hear from those fucks. I don't care. But there is one exception. The moment Taylor Swift comes out and says, I endorse Kamala, it's fucking over
It's
as
over.
far as Gen Zs and even millennials at this point. She is that
It's
powerful. I don't even know that I like her music. I like some of her songs, but I appreciate the integrity a young woman in her position continues to have.
yeah. Um, there's this AI fake thing going around on social media. It's a picture of Taylor Swift and Beyonce announcing their concert for Kamala or
Yeah.
whatever.
You know what?
That if that happened, that's like boom, it's over.
Yeah. There is that. And you know what? There's a lot of TikTok people like you and me saw it, were so anxious for it, they started reporting it as fact. And when I saw that, I said, let me check Reuters and some of the
No,
other places to
that
see
was
if it's
AI.
real. I
Yeah,
I learned some lessons very quickly. Always check, always
yeah, especially with
corroborate.
AI.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Did you see the AI that was recently put out about Donald Trump? You got to check it out online.
Yeah, with the black women.
The black women.
Hilarious.
And then you look at his face and it kind of looks like Donald Trump, but it looks like an AI version of Donald Trump.
No, it's
The one black
insane.
woman has 7 fingers. It's just a mess.
It's ridiculous.
But
You
that's the
know,
extent they'll go.
speaking of AI, I have to tell you something really funny. I have to open up this one thing because, so speaking of how AI is not the do all and end all,
No.
because I was talking about my Savannah chapter with the ghost in the room, and that thing is a thing. So I fed the chapter into I fed the chapter into our chat GBT, right? I said, so here is the chapter. What would you do to put out a scene breakdown, whatever, for a movie? Are you ready for what it renamed? Oh, wait a second. Did it erase? Oh no. I'm so upset. Wait, is this it? One second. Oh, it oh oh, so it gave it a new title. Slutty Ghosts. It's
Wow.
about a story about a 12-year-old girl and a 50-year-old man. Slutty Ghosts. So that's why you can't go with AI all the
And I will
time.
tell you this,
That's so funny.
it's an interesting story and it's in the goddamn book. If you don't buy the book for any other reason, buy it for that story.
That
That's
chapter
interesting.
is so good. Yeah, I love that story.
That's very interesting. We were talking about Republicans that are leaning toward Donald Trump in spite of the fact that everybody says, well, 71 million people, 74 million people voted for Donald Trump, but in 2020 there was a lot of Republicans that voted for him because they just vote Republican. It wasn't that they support them. And now, after the last 4 years, people are having trouble stomaching the shit he's saying, the stupidity he's showing, and now apparently the Harris campaign is organizing something called Republicans for Harris, And a lot of well-known Republicans are getting on board. And this has got to drive Donald Trump crazy because if he
Oh, I'm
wants to win the
sure.
presidency, he needs his party or unified, and they are not
Yeah.
unified.
I'm sure one of them is Adam Kinzinger for sure.
Yeah, no question.
He just, I'm on his, he has an organization that I'm on his mailing list because of the January 6th committee thing.
Yeah,
And he said, I'm officially endorsing today, actually came in the email. It says, why I'm endorsing Kamala Harris. I believe in democracy. Donald Trump does not. I believe in the Constitution. Donald Trump does not. There is nothing more conservative than standing for the Constitution and standing for democracy. Donald Trump only believes in gaining power no matter the cost to the Constitution
right.
and the cost to democracy. That's why I'm endorsing Kamala Harris. And, he's such a stand up guy. I mean, his policies are different than ours, but somebody like him, if he was up against some of these far left lunatic kind of candidates, like what's his name? The one that was just voted out in New York. Forget his name. Like that, there's not a question. I want
No,
integrity.
yeah, and that, Roy Cooper was up for the vice presidential nomination too, and then he pulled out. And everybody wondered why he pulled out. Well, the reason he pulled out is because his lieutenant governor is a rabid Republican, the one that stood up there about women's
Right,
rights and said some people need to be killed. He's a crazy fucker. So
right.
Roy Cooper thought, I
He
can't
needs to
leave my
save
state
his
with
state.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I can't leave this to
That's the
that
other
fucking
thing
fellow.
about that's at the Andy. Everyone's like concerned that he will, that the state would go to a Republican governor if he steps out. But I mean, there's
Well,
always going to be an issue with one of them.
yeah, you got to trade some chips, and whatever chip's going to do the least amount of damage to you, you got to give it up to gain some. Um,
Yeah,
and people ask me why would Republicans go toward Kamala in this situation? And I really think that some of these Republicans are seeing the demise of the Republican Party, especially if it continues on this MAGA train, and that I think they really see the fact that this this election is over for Donald Trump, and while they aren't helping the Republicans out by voting for a Democrat, it's almost like the fucking party's shot anyway. We might as well save democracy and then start over because that's really what they're going to have to do.
right. The thing is, some of these, like this one particular guy that keeps emailing me and saying vote for Trump, whatever, the one that accused me of being like, you know, he's one comes from rational and I'm being emotional. But he has been up until now a Democrat and has always
Yeah,
voted for Democrats. But he he was but my argument to him was if you want to save the Democratic Party, you have to save it from within.
yeah, yeah.
You can't go vote for those lunatics and think you're going to save the Democrats. That's not going
No,
to happen.
no,
So
no.
you have to come into the party, and when you identify whether it's too far left or whatever, then you help to replace those candidates that are seated, that are causing, whether they're, the anti-Semitic ones or the racist ones. There's still, just because you're Democrat doesn't mean you're not like a racist, misogynist. We got all them views in our party too.
Being that you and I do similar things on TikTok. No doubt you get the same kinds of things I do. I get a lot of people saying horrific things about me, and I don't really care, whether it be looks or
Very
age
rarely,
or
very
really,
rarely.
really.
No, I am telling you, I spend as much time deleting and blocking
I do
as I
too,
do.
but I
I mean,
think
I'll get a few like die queen, blah blah blah. What?
that's
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you. Because we're dealing with that kind of mouth breather. Fuck. I mean, some
Yes,
people.
yes.
First of all, I will say this: a lot of them come to me and say, "You're just paid by the Democratic Party." And I will just say, I'll speak for you too, Abe. If the Democratic Party
I
wants to
wish.
put us on the payroll, we're in. We're in. We'll take the money and
Yeah.
continue to do what we do. But I was wondering, because they're so homophobic, do people try
Oh
to
no, I
shame you
definitely get.
for being gay?
I get gay stuff. I get a certain amount of I'm a Zionist, murdering, thinging, blinging, whatever. I get a lot of that. But I can if I see a watermelon, even while I'm scrolling, I just automatically delete that because those people I know are in a different mindset than me. I want to build a core constituents of people that we can kind of work together towards certain joy. Like getting Trump out of the White House in 2020, I'm sure I said this to you the last time, and I'm going to say it till we get through this whole thing. We know what we're doing. We got
Yeah,
him out of the White House.
right.
We will keep him out of the White House. This is not foreign territory. We are not in Zimbabwe with machetes taking on, monsters. We are sitting comfortably in our armchairs, ready to galvanize people to make sure they register, make sure the people around you are registered, make sure there's people are calling their family members or wherever they are, make sure they're actually like we know what to do and we're going to do it again. And we have a candidate that's so friggin' fierce that it's going to be fun to do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you a story. I've told the story on the podcast before because I was so proud of myself for coming up with it. And it's, maybe a little arrogant, but um my family knows if I'm out in the wild, I don't engage people about politics out of the blue. I don't talk about politics. But I always tell them if they say something to my face, I can't let it go. I gotta correct them somehow. And one time, I was someplace and we were talking to somebody. They were had to be Republican or whatever, but they got on the topic of gay marriage, and they were talking about how it's an abomination and how they don't understand and the Bible's against it and all this stuff. And we don't understand gay people and we think it's horrible what they're doing. And I said, okay. And I looked at the couple and I said, well, since we're on the topic, what kind of kinky shit do you guys do? You got a swing? You got toys? What do you got to do? And the woman looked at me and she goes, "That's none of your business." I go, "My point exactly. We're on the same page now." And they
Right,
looked at me
right.
like they didn't know what I was talking about. I said, "Why do you care what other adults do in the privacy of their own home? Why is that something you have to fight against? I don't care if you're bringing livestock into your bedroom." I don't care what my friends do, whether they be gay or
Right, right,
or
right.
heterosexual. It's just the whole thing is silly. It's fucking silly. And that's what I don't understand why people don't get that. They don't
No,
they
that's there's this double standard of I get to decide what you do, but don't ask me what I do.
that's
And
exactly it.
yeah, and the other thing about that is that just to make a joke out of it, when they say we don't understand gay people, neither do we. But that's beside the
I
point.
I don't understand most people, It's really
Yeah,
weird.
well, we're all nuts, so there that levels the playing field right there.
Well, and that's one thing I was talking
These
about
poor
before.
fools.
Yeah, they are absolute fools. And people, if I've been in arguments with um, Trump and they'll get agitated because I usually twist them around. They're not very bright, and I'm reasonably intelligent, so it isn't hard to trip them up. And they'll say, I just don't understand why you can't see my point and kind of meet me in the middle. I go, listen, this sounds arrogant, but it's true. I'm absolutely right. You're absolutely wrong. There is no compromise in that. I can't be a
Right,
little wrong just to make you happy.
right.
We're talking about the things that are right. You're talking about the things that are wrong. I'm not going to come to your side no matter what you say.
And I don't. You have Trump fucks. I have very sophisticated, affluent Trump supporters, just to give them a different category of horrible, even though ultimately that's what they are as a Trump fuck.
Yeah.
But like they'll say he's going to close the border. Like, what are you talking about? Because he put it in his website, he blew it with telling the Senate not to pass the bill.
And
Like,
never putting up the wall and
and
never getting Mexico
like,
to pay for it.
so what are you talking about? It's almost like they want to believe that those tax cuts that they so desperately want to, benefit from is not really what they're talking about. And the thing about talking to somebody with no money when you're making a decision for people that are all about money is that like you can't bullshit me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's no policy that they're going to implement unless they, the worst case of Project 2025, where the whole thing turns into one big, you know,
Yeah.
what is it? The Reichstag or whatever, whatever the German, going back to the Holocaust, but
The
whatever the Reichstag,
third
isn't
Reich or Reichstag.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Third Reich. Yeah. I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Aren't you? And for Jews to even, it's like I always got like that Jews are like voting for fascists. I will never, I don't want to understand. I don't want to know why you think that's okay. Your parents obviously didn't live through Dachau. Don't even try to convince me. Don't try to make me look like I'm wrong. When the way say you said, when you go say I'm 100% right, you're 100% wrong. I'm 100% right.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
fascism. And this is
Well,
not a country. The whole beauty of this country is this is like trying to be this democracy thing, which sounds like a concept that we might not be able to hold on to. But don't tell me that your fascist idea is a better plan because
well,
you're fucking wrong.
well, and you know and I think this podcast kind of illustrates where you got to be open to the truth. When I do this podcast, whether I'm talking to you or Old Soul or Eric or Andy or any of the one of the things, I have this platform on TikTok and I try to avoid being this guy that's pontificating my way and that's the only way it is. Every time I do a podcast and I talk to people like you or some of the others that are on the show, I learn something every day and I'm not so arrogant that I can't say, well, that makes sense. And I'll go with that based on the information you give me. But I think these people that are wealthy are so arrogant that they think this is my way, it can't be wrong. And this is something all throughout the country. I mean, my wife works, she's retired, but she works part-time at an airline. They tell you to get there 45 minutes early, and there's a reason for that because you got to get your baggage and people will show up at 15 minutes before. They have to be moved to a different flight, and they're angry at my wife because she can't make it happen. Well, there's no
Right.
way to make it. Fortunately, my wife was a fourth grade teacher and she fucks them up. But the point is that everybody thinks they are special and they deserve to be heard, and everything they say should be regarded as gospel directly from Jesus. Donald Trump is like that uh,
Right.
to the 10th power, but people in general, certain people
So
anyway,
gross.
do have this feeling that if I said it, it's got to be fucking gospel.
Yeah, it's just and the entitled thing, but that's part of like the American culture that's kind of spun into this,
Yeah, it is.
entitled and yeah. Well, I just am excited that since our last conversation, we're in a whole new ball game.
We are.
It's a whole new ball game. It's an exciting ball game. I think this next few days is going to be very exciting. This thing, the role, I can't wait till I mean, can you imagine if the DNC was still with Joe at this stage of the game? I'm
Yeah, it would be
sorry.
tough. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, and if you presume the best is going to happen, a lot of times it happens. I feel like I feel like you and I have kind of gone through therapy because you and I have a different, you were down about a certain things and you were worried about certain things,
Definitely.
and now you're happy and confident.
Yes, a good conversation with you will do that. But
But
I want to say, just to quote, what's John Don Jr.'s girlfriend's name? What's that?
oh yeah, Guilfoyle or
Kimberly Guilfoyle. But just to quote Kimberly Guilfoyle, the best is yet.
To come. Does that mean she's going to get a facelift? Because that bitch looks rough.
She is. She looks like she knows she looks like she looks like Herman Munster. The same the makeup, it's very similar makeup.
Tell me if this is tell me if this is insensitive or inappropriate. I'm going to do it on the podcast because it's my podcast. Um, and I think of her when I made this comment. We had this. This is when Jesse Ventura was the governor of the state of Minnesota. Fucking
Yikes.
shit show. And he named this woman who was in the legislature, and she is this. She's a heterosexual woman, married, and she's just loud and obnoxious and big and just not a likable person at all. And because I worked with the Department of Transportation, because I was doing the radio, I got to go to this event, and I was the first one to meet her in my section of the Department of Transportation. And somebody said, "So what's she like?" And I said, "Well, she's about as nice as she is pretty." And she goes, "Oh, that's not fair." And I said, "Well, to take it a step further, um, she seems like a cross-dresser who isn't trying very hard."
Yeah, that's not a pretty look.
No, no, she was a. Put it this way, her claim to fame was that she at a local bar they had a they had a keg throwing contest, and she claims to have beaten Jesse Ventura in that.
Yikes.
There's a sweet girl.
Every state has one. We had, Arnold here in
Yeah, yeah.
California. And we have a whole bunch of other schmucks, by the way. I mean, California by no means is a panacea of like great Democrats.
I have one question for you because, and then we'll let you go and we'll wrap this up. But this is a question. Through this whole presidential thing and who's going to take over for Joe, everybody talks about Gavin Newsom. Now, from the outside, from a guy sitting in Minnesota, hearing him talk and seeing him and stuff, he seems like a good prospect for 2028 for president. You live in the state where he's the governor. What's your perspective?
I think everything changes when in the event Kamala becomes president.
Oh, I do too.
And if it's a successful presidency, why wouldn't she just roll into 24, 28?
She will. Yeah.
So then, even worst case scenario, she doesn't have, depends on how effective as a vice president Andy is.
Right.
And and we would know into the first couple of years of the Kamala presidency if we need to start really well. Now we have some people on the bench that kind of have shown up at this moment because of what's happening, but I think it behooves the Democratic Party to just put our best feet forward
Right.
all the time.
Right.
And the thing that the Democrats don't do, which is our mistake, because those ridiculous turning point events that the Republicans do every week in
Yeah.
one city or another, is they have their brightest, lunatics that we think they are,
Yeah.
but they are constantly out there galvanizing, massaging the groups.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
No, you're
We
right.
need to do that. Those are my fights that I've had with the DNC since 2020. You need to be with the people. It's not just a photo op. It's
Right.
not just two people standing in a farm, even though I'll settle for that. But it's about bringing people together in their spaces with their politicians. So those kind of things. And I'll tell you the whole mistake they made with the presidency with Biden and Kamala is that when we were giving away contracts to red states for infrastructure, and they would get the money and they would break the ground, it wasn't a Democrat that was over there
Right.
taking credit for it.
Right.
Okay, Joe's busy and old and couldn't travel. Where was Kamala? Where was whoever?
The
Where was
senator
the
from the
state?
state.
The
Yeah.
Senate? Embarrassing.
Yeah.
And if we don't sharpen up our tax, then, shame on us.
The only saving grace, if they don't take that tack going in to the future after November 5th, is that the Republicans have so badly destroyed themselves it won't matter. But it is something they have to pick
No, but
up.
it's
We're in
something
different
we should
times.
do. We have to think of 20, 30, 50, 80. It's
Yeah,
2080.
yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? It's enough of us thinking, this next November, bleh, we have to think of the world as a building democracy that can flourish. And how many times can we hack it off at the knees?
Well, and I think that's a message to millennials and Gen Zs because 15 years down the line, nobody's going to give a shit what you and I say.
No, and excuse me, and right now Gen Z is really good at organizing themselves, putting towels on their faces. You can't even see what they look like.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know how to organize? Great. Now do it with purpose. Now do it for something that stands for America. Now do something about your own freedoms. Fight for you. It's not about us anymore. It's fight for you. Fight. It's
Uh,
your future.
Absolutely. Well, Abe,
As always, a pleasure. Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure to have you here. It's always fun, and I know the people love hearing you come on, and they go, Mike's okay, but bring in Abe or Old
Oh,
Soul or
please.
somebody.
Oh, please. You're
If I
just saying that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not just saying that. I enjoy it too. I mean,
No. I get direct messages from a lot of your viewers in there. I really appreciate that, thanking me. And I'm funny and honest. And
well, and
yeah,
those of you that DM, buy the fucking book. We're again, again. I'm sending him a care package tomorrow because he needs to sell the book.
my Wheaties. No, let me tell you, I can only say this if you just go to Amazon and look at the reviews before you actually commit.
Yeah,
They make me cry.
yeah.
The things people say is unbelievable.
Well, I didn't know you as well as I do now when you talk to me about the book, and I think, what you know, what could be in the book that would interest me? I listen to the typical thrillers and stuff like that when I listen to books or history type things, and I go, okay, it's Abe. I'm going to give it a try, and then I'm listening to it and I'm entertained by it, and I go, how the fuck is this happening? I mean, Abe, and what it really tells me is that I think everybody has very interesting stories. It's
Definitely.
just you being able to recognize them and be able to tell the story. I think anybody could write a book with the stories they have. They just don't necessarily have the talent to recognize and to communicate it.
And the commitment to sit, and it's very painful because
Yeah.
I would sooner clean the kitchen counters than just go back to the story about like my dad dying and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot to get through, but yeah. Book two, I'm starting to flesh out and whatever, but I'm sure we'll be together at least for the Democratic convention. Is that in 2 weeks, right?
Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome to come on. And if you don't like Abe, there's a lot of suffering in that book. You'll
Ah.
love that part of it.
But you won't feel guilty.
No, you won't feel guilty. You won't feel
No,
guilty.
you know what? It's an uplift. I think it ends on a
It
high
is.
note,
It
right?
is.
It ends in 2020. Now, gee, what happened in 2020?
Right, right.
Hmm.
Well, and the thing about it is you can see Abe now, the end result. After you read the book, you might feel bad about some things, you might feel good about some things, but you see Abe here smiling, trying to sell a
Hmm.
book. So it
Yeah,
couldn't have been that bad. You got through it, and here we
I
are.
got through it. Got through it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Abe, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Those
Doll. It was a pleasure as always, and I will see you in
in
the
the
ethernet.
in
In
the
the
Ethernet.
ethernet?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Great.
For those of you listening, thanks for
Have a great
spending the
week.
time. Hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.